Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Cindy Woody with another test prep video for the TExES 268 TExES Principal as Instructional Leader exam. And today we're focusing on Domain 3 at the request of some of my friends. So we'll talk about human capital today. That's what Domain 3 is, human resource leadership. 18% of your total points on this test come from Domain 3, 13% from the selected response, and 5% from the constructed response. 005 is the first competency. I call it Coach Them Up. It's all about feedback and coaching, professional development, supervision, evaluation. And 006, I call We Are Family, which is all about teacher selection, placement, retention, growth, discipline, professional learning communities, and delegation of duties. So the symbol that I use for competency 5 is here on the right. It's a conversation between two people with two-way feedback, which looks a lot to me like feedback or coaching. I've highlighted some of the key words from the priority standards or priority descriptors that come in competency 5. The entry-level principal knows how to provide feedback, coaching, professional development to staff through evaluation and supervision, knows how to reflect on his/her own practice, and strives to grow professionally. All of the first 4 descriptors are in bold print with an asterisk, which makes them priority standards, meaning they'll be tested more than one time on the test, and you will definitely see them. The last 2 are not priority standards, which means they will have limited or no presence on the test, but they're still very important. These are all about your own professional growth, that you as the principal will engage in ongoing professional growth opportunities. You'll be reflective, you'll seek feedback, you'll try your best to continually improve and grow and learn, and you'll be seeking assistance from others to do that. So let's look at 005, evaluations and feedback. That's the first descriptor, communicates expectations to staff and uses multiple data points, such as regular observations, walkthroughs, teacher and student data, and other sources to complete evidence-based evaluations of all staff. So the symbol I've chosen is a checklist or notes with a pencil and a thumbs up. And I want you to notice that they say regular observations, which means in this perfect world of TExES 268, the principal and the teacher both want lots of formal observations, one or more, but typically multiple formal observations. And then, of course, weekly walkthroughs, because you as the principal have time to get in all the classrooms with your leadership team every week. And that is where you're getting a lot of your data points. So teacher data is things like lesson planning, the alignment and the rigor of the lessons, having teaching materials ready, having instructional materials selected, and activities that are appropriate for the students. All of this is data that the principal can collect through these evaluations. And then student data is things like asking the students what they've learned today. Like, do you understand what the teacher's teaching? Looking at the exit tickets, looking at how the student exemplars compare to what the teacher or the student work compares to the student exemplar prepared by the teacher. Evaluation is one mindset, but on this test, they typically use more of a development mindset, because evaluation, we sometimes think, just tends to be, I guess you would say, one and done. But developing teachers is all about the ongoing weekly improvement or daily improvement in the classroom. In this test, you are campus head of human resources. So you remember on Domain 2, we said that you were the head of curriculum instruction for your campus. So now you have another hat. You're the head of human resources. In each of these tabs, I'm giving you some more information sources. So if you want to pause any of them and look these things up, you could easily Google the T-Test Appraiser's Handbook. You can read or look at videos or summaries of any of the Bambrick and Toyo books that TA loves that they have embedded heavily into this exam. So B is coaching. And I have to say, I had so much fun with this icon. Look at that purple icon. Do you see the bride and the groom? And they're in their little getaway car. And who is driving? The groom is driving. And do you think the bride at any point along that ride wanted to make a suggestion about the route, or about the speed, or the just any of the things, when to stop? And remember, the bride's in the passenger seat, so she's not driving. And that's the same way with the coach. You as a coach, you're in the passenger seat, and you are coaching and developing teachers. You're helping them by facilitating teacher self-assessment and goal setting, conducting conferences, giving individualized feedback, and supporting individualized and professional growth opportunities. So on this test, the mantra or the mindset that they use is that clarity drives confidence and confidence drives change. So you should be looking for answers where the principal is helping the teacher arrive at the clarity of whatever instructional adjustment they need to make for them to gain confidence in bringing about improved student results. And those improved student results will lead to increased confidence, which will then give more change or drive change. And remember, this is a perfect world test, so we don't worry about how long it takes or how much time it takes, how many opportunities of reteaching there are, or how many days there are for this unit. In this test, we do the best we can to worry about student growth. And the kids in this test are just the best kids ever. They're all well behaved and they bring their homework and they have wonderful supportive families and they're just really tuned in. They just really want to learn. And you are the head instructional coach. So you know everything. You're just the best coach. You know what to tell the teachers and the questions that you should ask, and you can immediately look at data and internalize how this teacher could improve. I added some ABCs down here at the bottom from TEA, the TIL, the TIA, the TTESS, and the ESF. So if any of these things are existing in your campus leadership team, you might ask your mentor about them. TIL is the Texas Instructional Leadership Initiative, which is to help leadership teams develop strong systems for success. TIA is Teacher Incentive Allotment. You know TTES, that's the Texas Teacher Evaluation Support System. And then the ESF is the Effective Schools Framework, which is used for schools that are in need of improvement. I love the icon on C also. I chose a whole bunch of construction workers because you're going to be doing this collaboratively. When you make a PD plan for your school, you're that foreman person there in the hard hat holding the big main plan, and you're making the final decision. See, your mouth is saying something and you've got some stars and systems going on. You've got the floor plan of the school and you've got the blueprints from now and the past and the plan for the future, and so you're going to collaborate. That's a big keyword on the PD plan. Collaborate to develop, implement, and revise a comprehensive and ongoing plan for professional development for the campus staff that addresses staff needs based on staff appraisal trends, goals, and student information and data. So there's none of this canned one-size-fits-all professional development. We're not going to hire somebody to come in on our staff development day in October to teach everybody how to use thinking maps. Instead, we're doing continuous staff development, and that's what this plan is all about. If you've started PASL Task 2, then you know it has to be done collaboratively, and it has to be driven by needs, and you have to have data to prove that this is really what your school needs to work on. And it has to reach multiple kinds of audiences, whether it's a novice teacher, an experienced teacher, or somebody who's having trouble with classroom management, or someone who doesn't really understand some of the basic standards. There's all kinds of things that happen there. And then note the words with commas. So there's different, the standards that have commas, there's different phases of the PD plan, the development, the implementation, and the revision. And remember now, you're also the PD director for your campus. So put another hat on. You're in charge of all the professional development decisions, as long as you stay in alignment with the district expectations. And there's some more resources for you. In D, PD activities and resources. So this one gets down more into the nitty-gritty of the continuum. You're going to facilitate a continuum of effective professional development activities for everybody. It's appropriate with content, process, context, allocation of time, funding, and other needed resources. And so I like the coffee shop model here because if you've ever been in line at Starbucks, you know how each person personalizes their order. And it's possible to have 10 people in line and all 10 of them can order something completely different. And so the menu at the coffee shop exists, but it's so easy to customize the menu. So you can order a Frappuccino or you can order, you personalize it, soy, latte, double shot, espresso, whatever. It's the same way with the professional development activities and plan. So in this test, you're looking for job embedded PD. You're looking for professional development that happens typically during the conference period in the classroom or immediately before or after school. It's bite-sized, which means they're working on one small improvement. It's going to address instructional gaps. So it's something that's been observed in the walkthroughs and the observations, maybe something that they've recorded of themselves. It's led by school leaders, and you will be giving them models to follow. So you'll be coaching them through these models where they are either um, watching another teacher teach, they're watching they're watching a video of themselves, and they're working toward these small but continuous improvements. Now we move into the second competency, 006, and you'll notice everything's highlighted here because there's 4 descriptors. They're all 4 priority standards. I've used the model of the penguin family. I love the penguin family because remember we said 006 is we are family. We all do whatever it takes to get that egg hatched and that baby raised. And so the entry level principal knows how to promote high quality teaching by using selection, placement, and retention practices to promote teacher excellence and growth. So it's all about excellence and growth, which in turn promotes student excellence and growth. They're all bold print, so we're going to keep going. So let's start with 006A, effective supervision. So the effective supervision, the principal invests and manages time to prioritize the development, support, and supervision of the staff. So this is what you wanted to do when you went into being a principal. You'd likely very much wanted to support the staff. You wanted to support classroom teachers. You wanted to prioritize what they do, and you wanted to supervise them in a kind and loving and helpful way. And you really do want to maximize student outcomes. So I have to say, this one is a very sincere statement. And I believe all of you can get behind this, that you want your supervision to be just life changing. So this is your job. Look for that in the answers. So that may sound obvious, but when we get into some of the practice, you'll see that the principal is going to jump right in. They're in this model, they're going to be a little more direct with their coaching than in most coaching models, but that's okay. The supervision and the development is always tied to student outcomes. So you'll be looking for answers that get right tied back to student outcomes. There's some more resources for you. By the way, I don't know if I talked about this yet. You may want to pause this and Google the TPES Handbook for Principals and print the principal rubric, the TPES rubric for principals. It's like 6 or 8 pages, and it has action steps that are actually, you will get evaluated and marked on them. You'll get graded on them when you're a principal. But the test that you're going to take is aligned with the rubric for principals on TPES. So having that rubric shows you what you're looking for. And if you know what you're looking for, you'll choose better answers on the test. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's go to B. There's your professional learning communities. I bet you know a thing or two about professional learning communities. So in this model, the principal is involved in the professional learning communities. Sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't in other models. But on this test, they're often involved. But they typically empower the teachers. They're teacher-led. So the principal is facilitating collaborative structures that support professional learning communities to review data, to review processes, and work on policies, and in order to improve teaching and learning in the school. So notice nothing really is off limits to the PLCs. They're not just focused on a single lesson or a unit. This is not a lesson planning meeting. So they may be using this to plan for lessons, but they don't have to be. There's lots of things the PLC can work on. So this becomes your school's think tank. This is where all the good ideas come from, the action research and this grassroots improvement. It has to be rooted in student work samples and data. So in the answers that you pick, find the ones where they're really looking at what the students did yesterday. And that's probably going to be the answer. It's going to be the one where the students are looking at yesterday's work and they're working on improving um, misconceptions or missed learning from yesterday. And that's because the teacher has realized from their exit tickets or their other work, the exemplars they have to work with, that there's some problems. So that flattens out the chain of command. The principal doesn't have to be present in the questions for the answers to be right. So you'll see in a second, we're going to talk about distributed leadership. There's some thought behind that. If you have anything on your campus that's by solutions tree, you might just want to glance at some of the images and the icons in that material, because solution tree is who owns this do for and equal and do for and horizontal work in PLCs. So distributed leadership is also shared leadership. So look at the icon there. There's the checklist. So it's mission driven. It's very focused on the campus goals, goal driven, and everybody works together to do the part that makes the most sense for them to do. So you'll see there's questions about this on the test. When you're looking for distributed leadership, you're looking for leadership opportunities that have defined roles and that the principal delegates responsibility to be effective and to effective people. And these things support campus goal attainment. So remember, the goal is always about students. So if somebody has the wrong role or the time is being used wrong or we're looking for the next person to step up, it's going to have something to do with the student data and student goal attainment. This is all about shared leadership and empowering. Have you ever heard Brene Brown say clear is kind? So clear is kind in distributed leadership. Look for the principal to provide clarity for people. The goals, the goals of the school become the leader of shared leadership. Does that make sense? So when we're all strong people and we're all doing different parts of the work and the principal is doing it's in the classrooms and doing this professional learning development for people, then you have people working on their own leading, but they're led by the goals of the school. And the principal is the one who keeps everybody reeled in their lane and keeps the focus on those goals. And there's some more examples of resources for you. This one is HR strategies. So the last one, 006D, the human resource strategies. Don't panic. They're not going to get you in there and ask you a bunch of law questions. This is more about what is legal and what's expected for you to do with this cycle of supervision and the focus on students. So you're going to be looking at questions about recruitment, screening, hiring, assignment, and induction. You're going to look at how you develop, evaluate, promote, and retain teachers. And you're going to look at teacher discipline and dismissal of campus staff. But don't panic. We know that you likely have never had to let a teacher go and that you've never developed a growth plan. But there's some things I want to tell you that can help you with these kinds of questions. So look at the notes. Anything to do with HR strategies should be non emotional. So you are looking for everybody in the question, you're going to assume positive intent. So if somebody is being put on a growth plan, you're going to assume they're happy about that they welcome this assistance from the principal, that the principal is knowledgeable and professional, and there's nothing personal in this. It's all professional and it's done with diplomacy. You're going to look for the mission and the vision behind all the decisions, and you're going to know that student outcome drives anything that you do here, whether it's hiring a teacher, whether it's the selection and placing. Maybe you'll have questions where you have to move a teacher from uh, I don't know what you'd say, a favored position to a more challenging position. And even though they maybe have more experience or more tenure than the younger or the newer teacher, they're going to be given the harder assignment because that's what the student data indicates. Maybe they're better at working with this type of student, and so they need to be put in this type of setting. So the decisions are always neutral, they're not emotional, and they're always for the good of the school and the good of the students. So here are some examples. This is the t-test triangle. You may want to pause this and zoom in, or you could just Google t-test evaluation triangle. But for a t-test, you have to remember this is the assumption. And these little things that are written in the little boxes are kind of helpful to help you think through it. But there's a triangle. There's learner outcomes, which are impacted by teacher behaviors, and teacher behaviors impact learner outcomes. There's student behaviors, which are impacted by learner outcomes, and learner outcomes are impacted by student behaviors. And then there's that relationship between teacher behaviors and student behaviors. So you can see if we're having poor learner outcomes, it could be a function of student behaviors or teacher behaviors. But then those behaviors could also be a function of the other behaviors. So there's all this cause and effect here in this triangle. But remember, in this test, we're making positive assumptions. We're assuming that the teacher can grow and that students can grow when the teachers grow, and that learner outcomes will improve if the teacher and the students grow. These are the 4 domains of the t-test rubric. You're probably familiar with them if you've been evaluated on t-tests before. Remember the 4th one, the professional practices and responsibilities. That's evidence-based that the teacher helps gather the evidence for. So that's done all year long. The others are done, they're evidence-based, with the evidence is gathered by the principal in the classroom and in the discussion afterwards with the teacher. There's the POP cycle. When I say POP cycle, I'm talking about pre-conference, observation, post-conference. That's straight from TExES. This is the little schedule. You've probably seen it at your school. This is part of the TExES handbook. It's part of the evaluation process. There's legal parameters for when teacher orientation to the evaluation system has to occur within the first 6 weeks. Goal setting, especially if you're a teacher in single allotment school, you know a lot about goal setting and student learning objectives. Then the teacher orientation for the late hires, we have to build that in. And then the ongoing evidence to support for domain 4. And underneath that, this constant informal observations and walkthroughs are happening with ongoing feedback to support develop teacher practices. And then a formal observation window is established per local policy. It's got some exclusions about the 2 weeks before and after, 2 weeks after the orientation. And then before the last 15 days of instruction, you have to have the end of the year conference. May want to pause and zoom in or Google. This is a sample data-driven school-wide expectations chart. This is from Uncommon Schools Training, which is part of the Bambrix and Toyo model from a school called North Star. This shows what to do and what not to do. And I like it for several reasons. For one reason, I like it because it communicates expectations. And this is something like you might see on the test. And then it also shows you some of the the distractors that might be on your test. You could look for things like that. So look for the what to do's, the look fors, as opposed to the not do's. This is a simple graphic about PLCs. If you're not familiar with them, you could pause and look at that. A lot of times you hear people talk about Bambrix and Toyo's see it, name it, do it model. And there's actually two pieces. There's one before and one after. One is the get it and one is the embed it. So in the get it process, that's usually at the beginning of the year. We start with a why. In your back to school convocation and your back to school trainings, you'll get these big pictures with the research and the science and the data, and you'll see the why you need to do the improvements or make the change. And then you'll have the see it part, which is the real example with a video or a walkthrough or a model. You'll show what success looks like to the teacher, and then you'll help the teacher close the gap between what they know about a strategy and what it looks like in action. So that's the see it part. That's really learning about, let's just say we're making an instructional move where we do repeated review, and or maybe we're doing the types of people that we call on the questioning in class. And so you see an example of good questioning. You see what success looks like, or you go into a classroom and then you work on your questioning. The name it part is direct attention to the specific parts of the strategy. So co-create look fors. That means that you and the teacher will make a chart like this. See, this one has the look fors of what we're looking for and whatever their improvement is that they're working on. And then you'll turn that strategy into shared language. Then you'll name the steps of the stages that they have to do to reduce ambiguity or confusion for the teacher, and you'll support alignment across the classrooms. And then the do it means you just give teachers time to script it, refine it, rehearse, test the strategy. So let's say you're working with a teacher on their questioning skills. So they need to see good questioning skills. They need to be able to articulate and name what they're looking for in their classroom, and then name the steps they would have to do to get to where they need to be. Then they need time to script it all out and to practice it, maybe with their peers, with their script, with deliberate practicing with you. And then they go and they do it in the classroom. And then it starts over again. You'll observe, you'll see it to see if they did it, you'll help them, and then you just embed it by keeping it alive through support. This is a screenshot. I believe this was Region 1, had some information about TExES Instructional Leadership, and it's on several of the region web pages. But this is just a piece of a TIL piece or handout that talks about see it, name it, do it, and how that works with coaching. So it's a little bit more informative. You can pause it if you need to. These are just some notes I made for you about leverage leadership. I know that if you have not read leverage leadership and you're not familiar with the professional development model that Bambrix and Toyo endorses, it talks about the bite size and how it should be more impactful. It's better than a full day training. There's no training in isolation. So pause this, read it. You may want to screenshot it and print it. This is just in selection and induction, that they both have to be strategic. They both come from big picture outcomes. But selection is all about when you select the teacher, you're selecting them for a profile that you're trying to fill. And when you induct them into the campus culture, you're trying to help them see the big picture of what the campus culture is. So they adopt these ideas and shared values that you created together with your stakeholders. This is a scope and sequence guide that's straight from Get Better Faster by Bambrix and Toyo. I really love this. It's got the core principles of coaching, which is go granular. That means get really small. Plan, practice, follow up, repeat, make feedback more frequent. The 4 phases of skill developing or skill building, a dress rehearsal, instant immersion, which means getting there and do it, getting into gear, and the power of discourse, which is talking about it. This is a snippet of the TPES rubric that I was telling you to print. This is part of domain 2. So you can see if the person in the questions was doing these things, these would be the answers you would pick. So it's kind of like getting a 6 or 8 page cheat sheet of answers that would be just great choices for you to mark on your 268. If you've had no PLC training, these are the 4 questions. You can pause that and look at that. I would expect a lot on 3 and 4. I think we think on the test that you're going to see a lot of 3, and there's a ton of 3. The constructed responses have it, and it's all throughout your selected responses. But you can expect at least 1, if not more, maybe a whole cluster of questions about students who are already proficient on a skill and what you do for them. Okay, dun, 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 it's time for sample questions. These come from the Pearson website study guide. There's a link at the bottom if you haven't looked at them. And I have to say, take a minute and go look again at those questions. There's some great data on there for you to study. If you're struggling with being overwhelmed by all the pieces to read on that test, look at this and it'll give you some practice if you haven't looked at it carefully in a while. So this is number 18 from that list. I'm not going to go in depth with why the answers are right or wrong. There's a description for each of these items I'm going to show you that has more explanation. So Mr. Ramirez recommends action steps for Mrs. O'Toole to follow to ensure that her independent practice meets her instructional goals. Okay, so we're working on independent practice, and Mrs. O'Toole has some instructional goals. Place in the correct sequence the action steps that Mrs. O'Toole should take when planning and implementing independent practice. So if you wanted to look at it on your own, pause it here. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the answer is 3, 1, 2. So 3 is we always start with anything to do with working backwards. So we're going to script out the ideal conclusions that students should draw. So that's the only one of these that starts with working backwards. Then for the next action is number 1, give students a targeted writing task to complete prior to the lesson. And I have to say, this is why I use this example, because this is one of those that's a perfect world, textbook perfect question. Because let me just ask you, if you've ever worked with students at any level and you gave them a writing task to take home, and it almost sounds like they're taking this home, it doesn't say where they're completing it prior to the lesson. If they had a writing task to complete outside of class, how much confidence would you have that 100% of them would show back up with their writing task completed independently and with fidelity, doing the best they could, and that this would show with accuracy what they can do? But for the test, 100% of them would. Remember, this is perfect world. And then the last one is monitor and cue students to reconsider incorrect perceptions or conclusions. So you're always looking for that kind of an answer where the students have an opportunity to look back by being cued in some way, by being given something that helps them to go back and look at what they did wrong, because studying your wrong work is a very powerful way to improve. Here's another one similar. Mrs. O'Toole seeks advice from Mr. Ramirez about how to plan the lesson for the next day. Considering that many students drew inaccurate conclusions about the novel's main character. So remember, Mr. Ramirez, the principal, he knows everything. He knows all about novel studies, and he's going to know about pre-kindergarten, and he's going to know about anything else you want to ask. So Mr. O'Toole, which of the following is the best strategy for Mr. Ramirez to recommend? And the answer is 3, modeling a think aloud for students that demonstrates how to cite the novel to support conclusions. And there's some more explanation about this in the study guide, but the reason they like this answer is because this gives the students a chance to see how the teacher thought aloud. It gives them a chance to look at how to demonstrate how to cite the novel to support conclusions. The other ones aren't as strong, and you can look up why. Mr. Ramirez concludes that Mrs. O'Toole will benefit from coaching on how to address the problem of students reinforcing misconceptions or misunderstandings when participating in independent practice. Which of the following is the best recommendation he can give to Mrs. O'Toole? And it's number 2. Anticipating and preparing for errors that individual students or groups might make. So remember, this is all about the teacher's action to be prepared. Anytime you can choose one where the teacher is prepared in some way before the students have an opportunity to make mistakes, then choose that one. See, on this one, she's anticipating and preparing for errors that they could make. That's part of that process of preparing an exemplar of student responses. Okay, this one is Miss Fripp. Miss Fripp and the team want to monitor the implementation of learning from the campus professional development plan. Which of the following classroom practices best demonstrates evidence of progress toward the expected outcomes listed in the professional development plan? And the answer is 4. The general education teacher and the special education teacher split the class into 2 groups. Now, if you go back and you read, this one has a clustered set. There's a lot of information about Mrs. Fripp and the team and about this co-teaching model they're trying to do. And so they're going to, the general education teacher and the special education teacher split the classes into 2 groups based on identified needs to teach the same thing simultaneously using specific instructional methods tailored for each group. So what's the giveaway here that this is the answer? The giveaway is the 2 statements. One is based on identified needs, and the other is specific instructional methods tailored for each group. That's really what co-teaching is about. But it also backs up this model that Bambrick Sartorio endorsed. So everything goes back to the student data. And if you go back to the prep manual, the study guide, you'll see that it has explanation about why the others are weaker answers. Which of the following interview strategies should the principal use to best assess the instructional effectiveness of candidates being interviewed? The answer is 4, having the candidate teach a sample lesson and then answer reflective questions about the lesson. So if you notice, none of these are bad. If you've ever been through a teacher interview, surely you have at this point. Maybe you were the only time when you were interviewed yourself. But it's very common to ask the candidate what skills they possess to ensure the success of students at school. It would not be strange at all to provide the candidate with a lesson plan and asking how it could be improved. It's not odd to ask the candidate to reflect on an instructional goal they have achieved in the last 3 years, but this one alone really gets into everything that you would want from a teacher. So just teaching a sample lesson and answering questions. I've given you a couple of little pieces on the top right and the bottom and the center about who these people are. So let's read the question. In order to more effectively utilize, so this is from a cluster set. There's a lot of good things on this one. Please, please go to the manual and practice. In order to more effectively utilize Ms. Markey, Mr. Farad, and Mrs. Thomas. So Ms. Markey is the AP, the assistant principal. Mr. Thomas is the instructional coach, and Ms. Thomas is the instructional coach, and Mr. Farad is the Magnet GT Title I coordinator. And their jobs and the meeting that they went to, you see a sample agenda. One of them brought discipline data, one brought attendance data, and one discussed instructional materials. So to make them utilize more effectively, the principal should first consider, always look for first words, and the answer is A, training them to take on instructional leadership roles and dividing coaching responsibilities based on teacher need and instructional expertise. So in the sample that they gave, you can see the principal's week at a glance. There's a calendar, and the principal himself is everywhere. He's in every classroom. He's in every data meeting. Like, he's not doing any of this other stuff. He's not worried about discipline or attendance or instructional materials. But what this is saying is he could more effectively use them if he would train them to take on instructional leadership roles and divide the coaching responsibilities based on teacher need and instructional expertise. So if you really think about it, these others are good choices, but this one makes so much more sense. And then I believe this is our next to last one. After evaluating the action items from the administrative team meeting, Mr. Flores should prioritize number 3, building the leadership capacity of lead teachers by working with them to create a shared sense of ownership for their team meetings. So remember this always in this model on this test, you're always looking for ways to share the love. We're a family, right? Anybody can sit on the penguin egg, mom or dad. We just got to get that egg hatched. So he's trying to build the capacity of the lead teachers by working with them to create a shared sense of ownership. And the last one. Which of the following best supports Mr. Kapoor's request? So in this meeting, Mr. Kapoor is meeting with parents, and he's talking. It might be the site-based committee. I can't remember. He's talking about a request for choosing the teaching staff based on his staff projections for the merger. So we can assume that we're going to be merging this campus with another campus. There's a lot going on in this lot of drama, but remember, we're ruling out all the drama. We're skipping emotions, we're going straight to professionalism, and we're doing what's best for kids. So the answer is C. Reconsidering seniority preferences allows for student performance factors to be used as criteria in teacher selection. So what this is saying is the principal wants to set aside that if you've been here longer, you get to choose which campus you teach on or what your assignment is. He wants to set all that aside, and he wants to say that we as a committee are going to look at student performance and we're going to match that to teacher selection. So the kids get the teacher that they need and not necessarily putting teachers where they want the cushiest job. So now as we ride off into the happy little sunset, I've given you just a few little key phrases to help you remember. Choose the answers that fit these criteria: student-centered, data-driven decisions, teacher leaders, focused on instruction, positive, not emotional, continuous improvement, bite-sized learning, teachers love practice, and support by helping people grow and lead. So my parting words, I just want to say to you, yes, this is a hard test, but you can do this. You are smart. You are well prepared for this test. And you absolutely can go in there and crush this test. You've got this. Don't overthink this test. Just get in there, use the big picture, do the best you can, and know that you've got this. We need you, and I'm so proud of you. This has been Dr. Cindy Woody. Let me know if there's something else that you need, and I'll do the very best I can to help you be the next certified principal in this great state of Texas.